For the second time in a single week in Roxbury, a girl was injured by a stray bullet. The most recent case on Saturday afternoon was a 2-year-old girl hit by shots aimed at her father. Officials have been calling for more cooperation with police, but some believe there should also be attention to other factors. That's the view of our guest, who's been working in violence prevention for 20 years as the founder of Gang Peace and Street Peace. We'd like to welcome Reverend Rodney Dailey. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me today. Yes.
Just to make sure our viewers understand the story here, the father in this shooting, we can all suppose he knows something about who was trying to kill him, presumably. And the police commissioner said, well, he's not cooperating with us. He's not giving us the information we need to solve the case. Take it from there.
Well, it is an ongoing scenario that we see often. It is one where we have to think about the communities and where he lives and where he is going to continue to live even after this situation sort of subsides and gets its regular pathway, which is what happens. Someone gets shot, there's a march, there's a heightened alertness around that person, as it were, the 8-year-old not too long ago. And then there's sort of a settling down that happens and people move on. This is an outcome of a bigger issue. This is no longer a situation in our communities. Even when I had done Gang Peace in Boston for 20 years, it was out of control. It's not a situation where you can look at surgery, if you will, where someone can cut out the issue. Which is what I think Robert Lewis and Street Safe was trying to do with the Boston Foundation. They were trying to cut out the issue in a certain part of the community, and then if we get that out, then we will see a safer place. This is a situation that needs to be injected with a serum of, if you will, type of antibiotic, programming that lasts, that reaches down into what I call and what has been characterized as the underclass. There's the high class, there's the middle class, which people are talking a lot about in this campaign, and then there's the lower class, which people know about. But then there's this drop down to the underclass. The underclass is a place where we find pimps, hustlers, gangs, drugs being sold, drug dealers, gang members been developed, gangs been developed, because they have to live too. But it is a feeding tank, if you will, for the prisons. And so almost like purposely, it has not been a major development of strategies to change it, just move it around. Sort of, we may call it gentrification, but just to move it around, okay? There's a researcher, I loved him, he died, his name was Walter Miller. He began to talk about the central reason for the failure of the United States to deal effectively with youth gang problems. And it speaks to not being serious about developing a comprehensive national gang control strategy. And right now we have something called a gang center, which is in Tallahassee, Florida, but it's more of a data bank, if you will, of listing people who have gotten in trouble and now they're listed nationally.
We're talking with Reverend Rodney Dailey, founder of Gang Peace and Street Peace. Reverend, the usually simple answer to a shooting like this is if you find the person who did it, bring them to trial, that will break the cycle of violence and people will be held accountable. Why wouldn't that apply?
That would work if it were earlier on, maybe even 30 years beyond now. That would work if it were, Roger's neighborhood, won't you be my neighbor? There was a few criminals or someone who snatched a pocketbook, go find them, we'll lock him up and the community will be great again. But that's not, the community's not going to be great again. I mean, it's not going to be, that's something that would call, once again, for surgery. Cut out the rotten part of the apple and the rest of the apple is fine. But that's not our situation. And so it speaks to, the development, we need to develop more effective methods of dealing with a difficult social problem like youth gang crime would be enhanced greatly by the availability and acceptable explanation of what causes the problem. See, so now here's someone who's like, look, I got a team, maybe I have a team, maybe I don't. But my daughter just experienced this hot steel entering her flesh, 2 years old, devastating. I'm in pain about that. Underclass piece, that's what we do. We have learned to lynch, if you will. Lynch is meaning we commit someone to murder without the court of law. Our court of law is our court. We decide that you crossed the line. You shot my 2-year-old. And so I'm going to shoot you. I'm not going to wait until the police come arrest you and you can sit comfortably in a jail cell and wait and what have you. Now, some people may have a team that may be able to address that way, which is why we see so many shootings and murders and people getting away with it, because it's happening under the underclass with the underclass rule. In the underclass, the dominant law keeper is not the police in the underclass. It has its own rules. It's almost like why are people getting shot in the head more often now than they were in the past? Because the rule says if I shoot you in the arm or leg, you're going to heal up and come back and kill me. So I'm not going to give you that chance anymore. I'm going to come up close and I'm going to murder you. Now, there's so many unsolved murders. So this is that underclass piece. So now we have to look at how do we change that part of society, not just move it around with gentrification, not just, okay, we're going to mushroom this out to Brockton, Lynn, and so forth.
Or you could provide opportunities for some of them.
Definitely opportunity. I mean,
without moving them out, even.
One of the things that I just wanted to say, and without just verbatim, Walter Miller was a great researcher. He had researched the issues, but when we look at what the underclass provides for society, it provides a pool in which to fill prisons. It's a business. So unless we have a serious approach to this problem, like President Obama, he passed he's my brother's keeper, which it was a considerable amount of resources to do a thing. But just like we saw resources behind Street Safe, if you don't know what to do with the resources, if the resources are not being addressed or applied in the right way, then you're not going to solve the problem.
What if you had to work with members of the gangs that are supposedly involved in this most recent conflict? What would you do?
You have to have that. You have to have your coaches. You have to have your outreach workers. You have to have your clergy. You have to have people that know both sides, know these young people, which there are people who know them. Begin to speak to them about how to resolve this problem, how to resolve this issue. If we had a board behind me right now of issues that would light up in red every time an issue was, it'd be fully red right now. Because there are issues going on all the time that could result in a murder, that could result in someone being critically injured, and that's why we can no longer just think we can cut out the one issue or the two issues, or find the impact player, or find the persons that we think that lived in that area but that's all they have right now. So instead of looking at this thing like the gangs and underclass position is essentially a variant of there were these researchers called Cloward and Olin, blocked opportunity theories in the 1960s. Underclass theory postulates a new social class, which is the one I've been talking about, the underclass, and created by a new set of demographic, technological, and economic conditions whereby the demand of low-skilled workers in an increasingly service-oriented environment does not exist. Those jobs went overseas long ago. So what did happen? People created their own jobs. They created an opportunity, sold drugs, made money, and created their own jobs that way. Bought properties, bought buildings, and created their own system. So if I created a gang of individuals who are selling product and we're making money, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a moral person. Doesn't mean that I might be mentally ill. I might have some issues where I'm going to kill you for a little or nothing. You know what I mean? So when we have that economic starvation going on in an underclass piece where people are determined to live, determined to grow, determined to move up into the lower class and move up into the middle class, whichever way they can, whether it be through rapping songs, or whether it be through selling drugs, or it be through whatever it be, then you're going to have an immoral piece, and you're going to have people living around that that are being hurt either by accident or on purpose.
It's more than one case. Thank you very much for being with us.
Yes.
Reverend Rodney Dailey will have more news in just a moment.